You did everything right. You got the degree, you climbed the ladder, you hit six figures, or close enough that your parents stopped worrying about you. And last Saturday, you sat in your car outside an open house for a 3-bedroom ranch with vinyl siding and a kitchen last updated when people still had Blackberries. The asking price was $640,000. You didn't go inside. You just sat there with the engine running, doing math on your phone, watching couples walk in who looked exactly like you, wondering which of them could actually afford it, and which of them were just pretending the same way you were about to pretend. And then you drove home, to the apartment you keep telling yourself is temporary. There's a question buried in that moment, not the obvious one about mortgage rates or down payments or whether the market will crash. A different question, one that's harder, one you won't get the answer to until the very end of this. But it starts here, in the parking lot, engine running, watching other people walk into a future you were promised would be yours by now. Let's talk about what everyone gets wrong first, because the common explanation is almost seductive in how simple it is. Housing is expensive because rates are high. Rates will come down. When rates come down, you'll buy. That's the narrative. Clean, linear, patient. And it's wrong. Not because rates don't matter. They do. But because the problem you're actually facing has almost nothing to do with interest rates. The problem is that the entire model you were given for how life is supposed to work, earn more, save a percentage, buy a house, build equity, retire, that model was designed for an economy that no longer exists. And nobody updated the instructions. You're following a map drawn in 1985 through a city that's been rebuilt 3 times since then. Every landmark is gone. The roads don't connect where they used to. And you keep thinking you're lost because you made a wrong turn. You didn't make a wrong turn. The turn doesn't exist anymore. Here's what's actually happening. And this is the part that should unsettle you more than any price chart. You earn more than your parents did at your age. Adjusted for inflation, probably significantly more. And you can afford less. Not slightly less, dramatically less. Your parents' first home cost roughly 3 times their annual household income. Yours, if you could even find one, would cost 6 or 7 times yours. And that gap isn't closing, it's accelerating. But that's not even the part that matters. The part that matters is what that gap does to your psychology. Because you're not just priced out of a house. You're priced out of the identity you were building toward. And that identity loss is doing something to you that you haven't fully recognized yet. Think about a ladder. Not a corporate ladder, a real one. Leaning against the side of a building. You've been climbing it your whole adult life. Every rung was a milestone. The degree, the first real job, the salary that started with a number you once thought meant you'd made it. And you climbed with discipline. You didn't skip rungs, you didn't cheat, you showed up early, stayed late, said yes to the projects nobody wanted. Rung after rung after rung. And then somewhere around the middle, you looked up, and the building moved. The wall the ladder was leaning against just shifted. Not a little. Enough that the top rungs, the ones you were climbing toward, the ones labeled homeowner and financially stable and on track, those rungs now hang in open air. They're still there, you can see them, but they don't connect to anything anymore. And here's the part that keeps you up at night, even if you can't articulate it. You're not falling. You're still on the ladder. You're still climbing. Your income is going up. Your title is improving. By every visible metric, you're progressing. But the destination the ladder was supposed to reach has moved so far that climbing faster doesn't help. It's not a speed problem. It's a direction problem. The ladder is leaning against the wrong wall. And no amount of promotion, no raise, no side hustle duct taped to your evenings and weekends, is going to change the angle. This is why homeownership feels impossible. Not because you can't do math, because the math you were taught to do is solving the wrong equation. You were told to optimize for income, earn more, save a fixed percentage, wait for the right time. But the variable that's actually destroying you isn't income. It's the cost of the life that's required to earn that income. And nobody talks about that because it's invisible. It looks like success. It feels like progress, but it functions like a trap. Here's what I mean. You got the job in the city because that's where the opportunities are. The job pays well, but the city is expensive. So your rent is $2,800 a month for something your parents would have considered a large closet. You need the car because the commute exists, because you can't afford to live near the office, because the homes near the office start at $800,000. You need the clothes because the office has a culture, and the culture has expectations, and the expectations have costs. You need the gym because you sit at a desk for 10 hours, and your body is breaking down. You need the delivery meals 3 nights a week because you get home at 7:30 and cooking requires energy you've already sold to your employer. Every single one of these expenses exists in service of the income. They're not luxuries, they're operating costs. The cost of running the machine that generates the salary that's supposed to eventually buy the house. But the operating costs keep rising with the salary, and the house keeps rising faster than both. So you're running on a treadmill, bolted to the floor of a train that's moving backward. You're working harder, you're earning more, you can feel the effort in your legs, and the distance to the destination grows every single month. That's not a budgeting problem, that's an architecture problem. Now let me tell you about 2 people. You don't know their names, and it doesn't matter. What matters is the difference between them, because it will reframe every financial decision you've made in the last 5 years. The first person earns $170,000 a year, senior role, respected, works in a major metro. Their monthly take-home after taxes and retirement contributions is about $9,800. Rent is $3,200. Car payment and insurance, $700. Student loans, still lingering, $600. Food and dining, $900. Subscriptions, memberships, the small recurring charges that feel like nothing individually and everything collectively, $400. Clothes, personal care, the minimum required to look like someone who earns $170,000, $300. Transportation costs beyond the car, ride shares, parking, the occasional flight home, $300. They save about $3,400 a month. That sounds aggressive. That sounds like discipline. Over the course of a year, that's roughly $40,000 saved. In 5 years, with market returns, maybe $260,000. Enough for a down payment on a $500,000 house in a market where $500,000 buys you a house that needs a new roof. So after 5 years of elite level saving on an elite level salary, they can just barely enter the housing market at the lowest possible tier. And the monthly payment on that house at current rates will consume so much of their income that saving drops to almost nothing. The machine that generated the down payment gets dismantled to service the mortgage. The second person earns $94,000. Not glamorous, not prestigious. A role that doesn't come up at dinner parties. Their monthly take-home is about $6,200. They live in a metro-adjacent area. Not the city, not the suburbs, the in-between that nobody puts on a vision board. Rent is $1,400. No car payment because they bought a used Honda 3 years ago and paid cash. Insurance is $110. Food is $500 because they cook and they're good at it. No student loans because they went to a state school and worked during summers. They save $3,500 a month, more than the person earning nearly twice as much. After 5 years, they have roughly $280,000. They buy a house for $310,000 in a market that's not trendy but functional. Their mortgage payment is manageable. Their savings rate barely changes. They still have margin. They still have options. They still have the one thing the first person traded away and hasn't gotten back yet. And here's the question that should bother you. Which one of these people is closer to owning a home? The answer isn't about income. It never was. It's about the distance between what you earn and what it costs to be the person who earns it. And for most ambitious professionals in major metros in 2026, that distance is almost zero. Sometimes it's negative. This is the lie. Not a conspiracy, not a scheme, just a cultural assumption so deep it feels like gravity. The lie is that higher income creates more freedom. It can, but in the current structure, for most people, it doesn't. Because higher income in 2026 almost always comes packaged with higher costs, higher expectations, higher floors beneath which you're not allowed to fall without it meaning something about your competence, your ambition, your worth. The person earning $170 can't move to the cheaper area, not because it's impossible, but because it would feel like retreat. And retreat in a culture that only measures forward motion reads as failure. They'd have to explain it to friends, to family, to the version of themselves that spent a decade climbing toward this exact rung. So they stay, they pay the tax, and the house stays one more year away, always one more year away. Now let me tell you what actually shifts, not externally, internally. Because the people who do buy homes in this market, the ones who do it without drowning, they don't have a secret. They have a deletion. They deleted something from their operating system that most people don't even know is running. They deleted the link between their address and their identity, between their car and their competence, between their spending and their self-respect. This isn't minimalism. It's not some aesthetic with white walls and empty shelves. It's a calculation, a cold, honest, unglamorous calculation that says, the version of my life that includes homeownership does not look like the version of my life that my income is currently subsidizing, and one of those has to go. That's not a fun realization. It doesn't feel empowering. It feels like grief, because you're mourning a future you were promised, the one where a good salary meant a good house in a good neighborhood, where doing everything right meant arriving somewhere that felt like a rival. That future isn't available at the price you were quoted. It might still be available, but the cost is different now. And the cost isn't just money. The cost is willingness to be invisible for a while, to drive something ordinary, to live somewhere unimpressive, to let the gap between what you earn and what you spend grow wide and quiet and boring. Because that gap is the only thing that actually buys a house in 2026. Not income, not rates, not timing. The gap. And here's where the numbers stop being abstract and start being personal. If you earn $120,000 a year and your cost of living is $105,000, you have a $15,000 annual gap. At that rate, a down payment of $80,000 takes over 5 years. And in those 5 years, home prices in most markets will have risen by 15 to 20%. You're saving toward a target that's moving away from you faster than you can approach it. But if you earn the same 120 and your cost of living is $68,000, your annual gap is $52,000. The down payment takes 18 months. You buy the house before the market outruns you. You close the door behind you. And the monthly payment on the other side is a number that doesn't require your entire identity to sustain. Same salary, same person, different operating cost, different outcome, different life. The math isn't complicated. The math is elementary. What's complicated is the identity surgery required to make the math work. Because nobody taught you that the biggest obstacle to owning a home isn't the housing market. It's the life you built while you were waiting for the housing market to let you in. You need to hear something that sounds wrong, but isn't. Wealth is not money. Wealth is the number of bad options you can survive without fear. If you lose your job tomorrow, how many months can your life continue unchanged? If the market crashes the day after you buy, does it destroy you or inconvenience you? If the furnace dies in January and the quote is $6,000, do you write a check or do you spiral? These aren't hypotheticals. They're the actual test of whether you can afford a home, not whether the bank approves you, whether you can absorb the shocks that homeownership guarantees without becoming a hostage to the mortgage. Because here's what nobody says at the closing table. A house is not an asset until it's paid off. Until then, it's an obligation. A beautiful, appreciating, tax-deductible obligation, but an obligation nonetheless. And obligations only feel like assets when everything goes right. When something goes wrong, and something always goes wrong, obligations reveal themselves. And if your margin was already thin, if your gap was already narrow, the obligation doesn't just stress you, it owns you. This is why homeownership feels impossible. Not because it is impossible, because the version of homeownership you're imagining requires a financial margin that your current life is designed to eliminate. Every upgrade, every convenience, every status signal is siphoning off the gap that would eventually become a down payment, a cushion, a buffer, a life. And you can't see it because it doesn't look like waste. It looks like living. It looks like the baseline. It looks like what someone at your income level is supposed to do. But supposed to is the most expensive phrase in the English language. Supposed to is why you lease a car you could buy used for a third of the price. Supposed to is why you live in the zip code that matches your title instead of the one that matches your actual financial position. Supposed to is the invisible hand that reaches into your bank account every month and extracts the exact amount that would have eventually become your freedom. Here is where most people make the catastrophic error. They hear all of this and they feel it. They feel the truth of it somewhere behind their ribs. And then they do something destructive with that feeling. They panic buy. They see the market climbing and they think, if I don't buy now, I'll never buy. So they stretch. They take the mortgage the bank offers, the one at 43% debt to income, the one that technically qualifies but practically suffocates. They drain their savings for the down payment. They close with almost no emergency fund. And for the first 3 months, it feels like victory. Keys in hand, address updated, the thing they were chasing finally caught. Then the water heater fails, or the property tax bill arrives higher than estimated, or the company announces layoffs, and suddenly that mortgage payment isn't a milestone. It's a mouth that needs feeding every 30 days, regardless of what's happening in your life. And the freedom they thought they were buying turns out to be the last freedom they'll feel for a very long time. This is house poverty. And it doesn't happen to irresponsible people. It happens to ambitious people who bought at the exact moment their patience ran out. The market doesn't punish bad timing. It punishes thin margins. And if you buy a house with no margin, you haven't bought freedom. You've bought a more expensive version of the trap you were already in. With a lawn you now have to mow, the person who waits, who widens the gap, who lets the boring months stack up until the numbers aren't tight but comfortable, that person doesn't just buy a house. They buy it without fear. And the absence of fear, that quiet calm on the other side of the closing table, that is the thing that's actually worth owning. Not the house, the feeling inside the house, the ability to sit in your living room and not calculate, to hear a strange noise in the basement and feel annoyed instead of terrified, to see the market drop and know that your life doesn't drop with it. You're sitting in your car outside that open house, engine running, phone in your hand, couples walking in. You were supposed to be one of them by now, and the question you couldn't name, the one buried under the math and the frustration and the quiet shame of feeling behind, it was never about the house. It was about this. Do you need the house to feel like you've arrived? Or can you build the arrival first and let the house come to you? Because in 2026, the people who own homes without drowning are not the ones who earn the most. They're the ones who needed the least to feel whole. And from that position, from that terrifying, ordinary, unglamorous position of needing less, the math finally works. The gap opens. The down payment materializes. The mortgage fits. And the house stops being a fantasy you perform and starts being a place you actually live in. Without fear, without calculation, without the engine running in case you need to drive away. The ladder's still there, you're still on it. But maybe the move isn't to climb faster. Maybe the move is to lean it against a different wall. A shorter one, a quieter one where the top is actually reachable. And the view from there won't impress anyone at a dinner party. But you'll be standing on something solid, and you won't be doing math in the parking lot anymore.